Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the next part of our floor grates. We're going to be working on the base color. Um, so this is where we left off last time. I am a little tired. It is earlier than I usually record. Oh wait, let me get rid of this bottom bar here. There we go, now it should go away. Alright, so let's get started and keep this video as short as possible. Um, let's see. Alright, so make sure you give yourself some space because our base color stuff is going to go right here. And then our roughness for the next video will go here. So we're going to start all the way over here with a white noise fast. Then we're going to blur this. And this one should be set to 0.055. Don't forget to turn the quality up. So 0.005, or is it 55, was it? Yeah. Alright, so I wanted to kind of walk you guys through my process with references so you guys get used to it as well. So these are some of the, you guys saw this on the first part, and then I got here a couple metals that I thought were pretty close to what I think this would be. And then this is for the grate surface. Because here you can see that they're pretty shiny. So we know that from that they're not going to be very dirty, and they're going to have like a very low roughness value. So I use this one the most. So if you look closely, you can see that there's like a bunch of different like white and dark spots, and then like this like middle gray. So that's what I'm trying to do here with this white noise fast. So let's keep going. So obviously we're doing color, so we need to turn this into a color value. So we're going to use a gradient map. And then I just use two values here. Bring this over here. So for the first one here, the settings for that one. And then for the other value. So this one's darker and this one's brighter. So it's giving me, you know, a gradient between the two values. Then we're going to do a blend here. Set the copy with 0.85 opacity. Then we're going to start here with a clouds 2 with a disorder of 0.26. Nothing fancy about that. Transform here, I think I just divided it by 2. So I wanted to increase the tiling. So this is the original. And then I doubled it, the tiling. And then here I played with the level a little bit. And then we're going to plug this into the opacity. And then we're going to need a uniform color up here. Because if we look here, some of these are based on the reflection, but you can see that there are some darker spots and they're very soft. You see like this like darker shape here. So I'm using this like clouds here to try and get some of that into there. Just very subtle differences. And then I have the opacity here to 0.85 so that the colors behind it still kind of come through. Then we're going to need a Perlin noise with the levels here. Set scale to 12. Levels there. And like I said, if you see like a very like detailed number like this, it's probably because I just hit auto levels. Okay. Oh, and something to keep in mind here, pay attention to, is our uniform color. I scaled it down to 8 by 8. And if you go here to the output size, you can turn this down. And then this one's slightly darker. So this one's 0.5. So now we're getting more of that different color. Okay. And feel free to play around with the opacity if you want to get more of that or less of that opacity coming through. All right, next we're going to go with the grunge map 001. I'm just going to copy this stuff here. And actually what you can also do, you should be able to like click on the uniform color, click the color picker, and then click on the video, and then click hover over it. Hover over the uniform color box. If you don't want to be like reading the values or inputting it yourself, that's another way you could do it. This one's a copy with 0.7. And now we're adding these little like darker spots here. Actually, I should plug this in so we can see it in our port. Okay. Now, I'm not worrying too much about this, our noises carrying over, because we are going to be painting or coloring on top of these grates later on. So I'm not really bothered that like this noise is kind of going over here, as we've gone on in many videos. We don't like that, but in some cases we do. But not in the, but we don't care so much about this one because this will be a different. This will go through a whole different process of coloring. It'll just be on top of whatever is underneath it, so not a big deal right now. Okay, then let me just click on everything so you guys have the values. Now for this one, now we're adding these spots that are a little bit more noticeable. So here I was trying to do some more of like this dirtiness here, but I didn't want to go too crazy on it because this looks like it's a wall, because this looks like it's dripping down. I could be wrong, but because this is a floor, you know, it would, the kind of dirtiness that you would find on it would probably behave a little differently. So we're using a grunge shavings here. Copy blend, because the reason why normally I use an opacity of 1, but for this case I do want some of the color below it to come through. So maybe we'll do like 0.75 for this one. Actually, let's get crazy. Let's go with 0.7. Because I do want some of the colors below it or underneath it to come through. All right, let's keep going. So this goes in here, this goes in here, and then we need something down here. And I think I'm pulling from the clouds earlier. So it's always good to reuse where possible to keep your performance up on your graph. When if you start using, let's say you use 10 clouds and they're all individual clouds, when they can all probably share the same 3 clouds, you know, that'll obviously be better to reuse where possible. Okay, so we have a grunge splashes dusty here, some of this random noise that I thought would be nice. I like that it has like some like dragging spots that are a little bit higher contrast than the rest, but there's also some subtle contrast here, like this stuff right here. So that's kind of cool. So there are the settings for that. And then here, yeah, I shouldn't do this. I had this rotated 45 degrees, but when you do that, so let me go back, it ruins the tiling. You can see right there. that harsh line. I don't know why I forgot I did that. If you want to rotate something 45 degrees without breaking tiling, you have to do a what's called a safe transform. But the catch is that it tiles it a little bit for you. So let's say we rotate this. Is that 45 degrees? It looks like 90 degrees. I don't know. I don't really use this much, but this makes it so whenever something, when you would rotate something, it keeps the tiling, but it can be a little funky sometimes. All right. So yeah, I don't want to do the. So I'm gonna, because I remember I did a 45-degree turn, so I'm just gonna do a negative to bring it back to what it used to be, and then I just divided it by 2. And then here, I subtracted the clouds from earlier. To 0.625, because I want to like get rid of some of it to kind of break up the tiling. And then we put that in here with copy. And 0.55 on the uniform color. All right. Next, we have this guy here. I'll just put this here and then we'll walk through it. So here we start with a moisture noise. And here I actually changed some of these settings. Normally I don't, but I tested some things out. The pattern size I think is the most important. I think by default it's set to like 1 and 1. Yeah, so I did 2 and 2. I thought it was a little interesting. Then I messed around with the scale, and I think that's it. And then the disorder, I think maybe. Then we put that through a scan here, because I don't want all of it. I want some of it. Played around with the contrast. And then here, I rotated it 180 degrees. I just clicked this. And then I offset it a little bit. I moved it over here. And then here I did a max light in between the two. So I normally what I do is I'll double click this, and then click the transform 2D once, and then move it and try and get like a more even noise pattern. So this is what I went with. And then here I sharpened it a little bit because I wanted it to be less blurry. Intensity of 1 for the sharpen, and then we feed that into a copy with 0.625, and then 0.8 on the uniform color. Okay. Now this next one's the longest one out of the color. We'll just copy this. Place that there. Put that in there. That in there. Leave that here. We'll be plugging this in for the next part. So here we start with the black and white spots too. Nothing too fancy. I need to stop doing this rotating stuff. No wonder my stuff was breaking. So let's do negative 45. So for you guys, all you have to do is just leave it as it is and just divide by 2. That's pretty much all I did. Oh, except I think this one moved it down a bit. So let me just show you this so you guys can see. That's for the bottom one here. And then this one's for the top. Then we did 2 histogram scans with position of 0.15 for both of these. You could probably play around with that. And then here again, I just added them together. And then here what did I do? I just offset it a little bit. Yeah, just offset it a little bit. And then I added them together again. Then we have a white noise fast here. Histogram scan, 0.025. Then we blur it a little bit, even though I don't think it really does much because it's only a pixel. But we'll pretend it's doing something. Then we're going to do an auto levels. And then we're going to slow blur these guys with the black and white spots too from earlier. So just drag a connection from it, plug it into the bottom with a very, very low intensity. Obviously turn your samples up, and we're doing min for this one. So now we're getting this kind of noise where we have some really harsh pixels and then some that are kind of faint in the background. And then we have a couple clusters. And then here I use a levels node to kind of bring more of that out. This makes a really nice like grainy noise. And then here we add it with our previous one. We get this. Then we plug that into the opacity here, the copy, full opacity, and then 0.8 on the uniform color. And then see the before and after. Then you can see here. So now it's adding this nice little variance in the color with these white specks. And there's a million ways to do this. So sometimes I just sit there and I just bring in like 5 different noise textures, and then I slope them, I slope blur them, I subtract, I multiply with the clouds, and just there's like a million different ways to get like a similar result. So this isn't like exact numbers, exact values. Okay, and then we're gonna go here, plug this in there, plug that in there. And then this guy from earlier is going to plug in right here. Okay, so we're going to use a grunge galvanic large. You can see the settings there. For the transform to the afterwards, we just divide by 2. Then here I bring down the levels. Then like I said, we plug in this black and white spots 2 to the transform 2D. And I don't think I do anything with it. I think I had this rotated. That's why I had it. I had a transform 2D, but technically you can just like dissolve that if you want. But I'll just leave it because it's kind of holding the connection together. Then we do a histogram scan, 0.5 by 0.5, and then here I subtract this from this to get this. We just kind of add some texture to like the flat parts of our galvanic large, which makes it a lot more interesting. Then we feed that into the opacity, and we have a uniform color here. This should be 0.09. And then a copy. And now we're adding some like some of that dirtiness that we pointed out earlier. I wanted to get some of this coloring. Because if we look closely, you can see that it's like there's some darker spots, like it's dirty. So I went with that color. I think it was kind of fitting. Okay, now here we are going to copy this stuff here. You guys let me know in the comments if you prefer that I copy and paste things like one at a time. Maybe that makes it easier to follow than copy pasting like segments like this. But yeah, let me know. So we have a grunge scratches rough here with these settings. Just played around, wanting to get some thin scratches. Then here I double the tiling. Then we have a purling noise with scale of 16. And then I multiply these two so that there's some fading for the scratches. That way it seems like the scratches like start somewhere and end somewhere. Let's go over here. Oh, this needs to be connected. Alright, so then we have an ambient occlusion, HBAO, and then this should be plugged into it is plugged into right here. So it is at the start of the grate floor. So this is like the actual floors here. So we want it plugged in right here, right after this guy. We're gonna go from here, and that should go right there. Should probably just have it go from there. So we get the ambient occlusion from everything except for the our grates, which is what we want. Height depth 0.03. Then I invert it because I want the shadows to be white, because that's what I want to use for the opacity. And then we use a histogram scan to tighten it up a little bit, because you can see here it's very gradient-like. So I wanted to extend the white a little bit further out, because this is going to be the deepest parts here, and those are going to be really, really dusty or dirty. So I brought up the position and the contrast. And then, or actually not this one, it's this guy over here. This little crevice is up here. This is below it, but we're going to cover it, so I don't really care about this. Then from the Perlin noise, I pull out and I have a transform 2D. And I think here I had it rotated, but then I undid it. So you technically don't need this. But this Perlin noise is going to feed into the slow blur grayscale that we have here. So actually, let me just delete this guy and move that there. And what I'm trying to do here is just kind of add some distortion to the shadowing, because I don't want it to be like it is here where it's like perfect lines. I wanted to break it up a bit. And notice that the dust is now going on top of like the metal divider. That's okay because we're going to mask that out afterwards. So I have it set to the slow blur set to max. And then here I overlay the previous scan, and then that gets rid of where we didn't want it before. So we don't want it here. And I don't want it, I mean, I don't care if it goes this far out because we're going to put something on top of it, but that fixes that issue. So set that to overlay. Then we are going to use this overlay blend to subtract from the scratches. So this is before, and then this is after our subtracting from this. Because the thinking here is that if there's going to be a scratch on this surface, I don't want the scratch to go down and continue, right? Because there's a crevice. So like a scratch would probably just go from here to the top of this. So let's plug this in. And plug this in there. Then let's see if we can see that. Or can we find a scratch? You kind of see it there, but that one's not a very good one. It's hard to see that one. Okay, kind of right here. I'm gonna turn this red, so this is what I do when I can't see something too well. So if I turn off this, where we subtracted the ambient occlusion, you can see here that the scratch kind of goes down and over, and maybe it's not necessary for this one, but that's something to definitely keep in mind about how scratches work. So if we turn this back on, you can see here that the scratch ends here and it doesn't carry over. Alright, so let me undo that and go back to the original color and turn this back on. Okay, moving on. Alright, after this, then this guy is going to plug into the bottom. Let's plug this in real quick. Where's my other connector? Oh, there it is. Get rid of that. Okay. So for this one, we're going to start with the grunge spots here. And then we're going to slope blur it. Min mode. And then we're going to use that preload noise from earlier and plug that into the bottom. And what I wanted to do here is just like fade some of these spots. So this is what they look like normally. And then with the slope blur, kind of give them like a little fade. So it looks like it's like some sort of like liquid spot they got like moved over, and it's not just like perfectly sitting still. And then we have our uniform color here. Set the copy 45. I'm not sure if I showed this one. This is one that also copies it to 1. Okay. Then here I just add a bunch of small or more varying noises pretty simply. Plug that in, plug that in. This was a grunge map 012. Color here. So this is just some more scratches and stuff. Copy set to 0.75. And I wanted these to be on top of the dirtiness, so it's like a scratch that happened afterwards, just to kind of break up some of that dirtiness. Then here we have a dirt 3. And I don't want all of these, so I scanned some of them out. Position 0.31. Let's actually add one of these guys down here. And then I do a directional warp, and I use the original dirts. And then we have I leave the angle to 0, so they're warping in towards the left in that direction. Intensity of 3. Copy 0.57, and then here dirtiness, the uniform color 0.175. And it's just about layering more and more detail. And for this one, I'm not too worried about like super detailed because the main surface is going to be the grates, not so much the metal in between, except for these sides. But yeah, we're not gonna have like large surfaces of metal like these guys because it's gonna be painted or a different color. All right. Okay, so now we're at the point where we're gonna add the color for our grates. So let's plug this in here, plug that in there. So our color for it is going to be 0.075. Copy a scan here set to 1.1, and obviously I need to connect this. And for this connection, we are going to pull from, I think this guy. So I'm going to pull out of here to a connector here. And then from here, it's going to go in here. So I'm going to move this forward a little bit so it kind of lines up. I'm just going to grab this stuff and move it back a little bit. Delete that. Okay. So now we are coloring the grates. That's great. Pun intended. And then for this part, we are, how do I want to do this? All right, we're gonna set up a couple nodes that we're gonna be reusing for the remainder of this part. So from this histogram scan, we're gonna pull down and we're gonna do an invert, and then just make sure you line it up. And then we're going to need a flood fill below it. And then below that, we're going to use an ambient occlusion. Set to 0.05. Then below that, we're going to do a normal. Alright, now let's plug these guys in. So let's start with the flood fill here. For this guy, we are going to be pulling from this guy here, after this guy. So we're going to make a connector here. I'm going to pull that. So this is from the grate. So once we have our 4 mirrored, once we have our 4 of them, we can drag that up here, and then this can plug into our flood fill. And you'll see why. Then for our ambient occlusion, we need to pull from, we're going to pull this from the same place for the normals and the ambient occlusion. And it's going to be from the end of our height. So from here, because there's nothing else after this for the height. Plug that in there. And also there. Alright. Now that we have this, we need a flood fill to random color after the flood fill. So I'm just going to type in random color. Alright, now we can continue. So here, we're going to start with a Perlin noise. I changed the random seed here to 1, scale of 10, into a vector warp grayscale, set to an intensity of 5. And then we need to put plug in our vector map at the bottom, and it's going to be this guy here. So I'm just going to plug that in there. Then for this guy, we have a blend afterwards, and we're going to be subtracting. So I'm going to drag this guy out because we're going to be reusing him. And then we're going to go from the invert grayscale, and we're going to subtract because I'm trying to get rid of anything that isn't the grate. So now we're left with our Perlin noise on the grate surface only, and then that plugs into here. Because what I wanted to do here is add some discoloration to the grate. So here it's just completely black, and then here we added some brighter spots to it so that it's not completely the same solid color or the same uniform color. So it's very subtle, but you can see that there's some like brighter spots than in other areas. Okay. Then after that, we want to graph this. Plug that in there. Let's plug this in first. Okay, so for this part, we have another ambient occlusion here. But this one is going to come from this that we did earlier in the first part. So we're going to pull out of here. Let's move this down here. And then this is going to feed into the new ambient occlusion. And I'll explain what we're doing here in a second. So we have our ambient occlusion here with a height depth of 0.003, and then we invert it. And then below it we have a clouds 3, and then here we tile it. and then I multiply this with the invert. So what I wanted to do here is have a difference in coloring on the edges of the grate holes, because that's where I'm assuming there's a contact between, like, you know, people walking over it, and they're going to be like wearing down the color around the grate holes. So I had to kind of fake the ambient occlusion by using this guy here, which, if you notice, if we were to plug this into the height, ignore the color, but look at the, actually I'll just do this. So this is the height map I made by taking the frames. Well, I took the tiles and I inverted it, and then that gave me this. And then here, I took the grate holes where the holes were white, and then I added them to get this. Now when I do an ambient occlusion, it's going to give me shadowing here and here, as you can see already. And that's what this ambient occlusion is doing. So if we were to plug this, actually, we need to turn that into a gradient. It's too much work. So it's giving me the shadowing there, but then I invert it to make it white. And then I don't want it to be perfect. I want to break it up a little bit. So that's why I multiply with this clouds 3 here. Otherwise it would look like this. So it's like a little bit more interesting. And then we copy it using this color, which is just a brighter version of the grates. And then it makes it a little bit more interesting. We add some wear and tear to it. All right. So let's replug this in. Don't need that connector there. So yeah, sometimes you have to like what I did here, set up a fake ambient occlusion height to get the look that you want. All right. We're almost done with the base color, kinda. Definitely past the halfway mark, so I'll speed things up here. Graph this. So then we have a grunge scratches dirty here. And then here I move it and I increase the tiling. Then vector warp it, intensity of 10. And then the blend afterward is set to subtract. And what we're going to subtract from it is this guy here. Because I'm trying to get rid of that mask. Then let's plug this in. And we should probably plug this back into the main. And then we need this guy. For the vector warp. For obvious reasons, I don't need to explain that again. So then we're adding like another layer of like dirtiness on top. And it's very, very subtle. All right. Now for this part, Substance Designer, has a set amount of like noises and stuff that you can use, and they're all very useful. But sometimes you need to get some extra stuff. So, all right. Sometimes you need a little bit of extra. In which case, sometimes I will go into Substance Painter. So if you have this, This will be good. So I open up Substance Painter here, and then I'll filter out or filter in textures, and then I'll just type in like dust. Now Painter has a lot more like noise textures than Designer, but you're able to use them in Designer. So find something that you like. For our case, we are going to need so let's set it up and then we'll go back to Painter. So after let's copy paste this. Then we need a clouds one that will go in here. Don't worry about I'll go over this in a second. Just make sure everything gets plugged in. This goes in there. And then this goes in here. Plug this in here. Okay. So when you see this green, I think that means it's like external, I think. Could be wrong. Like it's being brought into this graph. So we have grunge, dusty, powder. I think there's more to the name, but so if we go to painter and we type in grunge, dusty, powder. I think the one we want is I already forget. Okay. It's this guy here. It's called grunge, dusty, powder, soft. So to get it in there, right click it and then go to show in and then show in explorer. And then it'll give you the list of everything that's within that folder, and then it'll highlight yours, and then you can just click and drag and it'll load it in there. Alright. I do have an alternative for those that don't have access to Painter, but I think these guys you can probably find, and I'm just guessing, but there is like a sharing substance sharing website, I think, and you can possibly find these guys there, but don't quote me on that. Okay, so I increased the tiling on this guy to 2, and then I subtracted this clouds 1 from it to kind of break it up, break the tiling up, 0.65. Then vector warped it by 5 using the same flood fill that we used before. And then I subtracted out the mask, this guy here from earlier, to just kind of get it on the grates. And then, plug it back into the blend, copy, set to 1, and then this color. And you can see the difference there. Now, if you don't have access to this, you can do a grunge splashes dusty with these settings. It's not the same, but it's it's relatively close. And then just divide by 2, or divide by 2 twice, I think. And then this should be pretty similar to this. It's not perfect, but for those that don't have access to Painter or don't want to go over there or whatever, this is the alternative for it. And then just plug that into the middle. And you should get a pretty similar result. I'll just leave those here. Okay, then after this, just gonna grab this stuff here. There's another one here that we're using from Painter. This one's called Grunge Paint Streak uh, Circular. So if you hover over the node, it gives you the full name. And then we just need to plug in these guys from below. Whoops. So obviously this guy's going to go into the color. And then again, we have to subtract out what we don't want for the mask. So these are the settings for the Grunge Paint Streak. Vector warp by 5. We subtract the mask. Let's plug this in. We're just rinsing and repeating now. And we're just layering more color. The alternative for this one that I came up with kind of quickly, and you would replace this here. Started with a grunge spots 30, like this. Into the settings. I divided by 2, and then I just turned down the level out height to 0.5. And I think these two look pretty similar. Or you can, make your own. But that's the alternative for this guy. Just leave that there. We're almost done. So let's grab everything and just move it back a little bit. Give ourselves some more room. Now here we need all of these guys. We're going to start with a scratch generator. Scratch generator. You can see the settings here. Now for this histogram scan, we are going to pull from our ambient occlusion from earlier that we set up. So I'm going to drag this out, get this connection going, and then this is going to go in there. Then we scan it, 0.05, we invert it, then we blur it a little bit. Again, just to blur out some of the scratches from going over the grate holes. And then here we plug in from this guy here. So we're going to pull this out. And this guy is coming from the blur, which also was used for the histogram scan here, but we're doing it before the histogram scan. So this is going to go in there. Just kind of line this up a little bit better. So here, like I said, our scratches, and then we subtract the grate holes because I don't want the scratches going down and over this. I want them to stop like about here. And then here I get rid of the stuff I don't want by using this mask. And then we blend that in with a copy. And then there's the color. And it's all just like a slightly brighter version of the grate floor color. Because, when something gets worn, it gets like brighter. Then after this, where do we leave them? Okay, right here. Okay. So then after this, we're going to add our dirt using the dirt generator thingy. Now we need, obviously this takes an ambient occlusion and a curvature. So for our ambient occlusion, we are going to pull from this ambient occlusion here. So let's continue this. Plug that in there. So now we have our ambient occlusion. And then we need the curvature, which is going to be from obviously our normal here. Like that. Now let me try something here. Oh, here we go. Okay. So this is just something I wanted to show you guys because it happened to me again when I was doing this. I'm trying to do a curvature smooth out of my normal, but for some reason it looks like that. But if I do any other type of curvature, it works just fine. And I think I mentioned this problem in the previous tutorial, but I couldn't replicate the bug, or I think it's a bug, but here I could. So I can show you guys. So this is what it looks like, and it's obviously not what you want. For some reason it looks like this, but I noticed that the fix is just changing the tiling mode from relative to input. Just change it to absolute. You don't have to change the tiling mode. Just change it from, relative to absolute, and it should go away. Um, Sometimes it happens. I don't know why it's happening. Maybe it's not a bug. Maybe it's something I'm intentionally doing, but sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, which is kind of weird. Yeah. But anyways, that's how you fix that if you get that issue. All right. Now let's go over our new settings here. So we have a curvature, and then our dirt settings. And then I need to pull from the same mask as we did here. That's gonna go in here. Because I want to get rid of the dirt from the, not get rid of it, I want to subtract. I want the dirt to be more noticeable on the metal than on the grate floor. So I'm taking the grate floor and I'm subtracting some of it. Not all of it. But I'm only subtracting it from the floor. So this dirt on the metal is going to stay the same. But if I turn this up, or actually down, this would be the dirt that would be on the floor. But I don't want, like I said, I want less on the floor. So I use this mask and I subtract by 0.4. This would be no dirt on the floor, but I want some of it. But I want it to be subtle. And obviously you're gonna get more dirt, piling up in here. So subtract 0.4, and then we're gonna plug that back in here. Okay. Then after we're just about done here. And then this is something we typically do. I don't know. Sometimes I take it out. Sometimes I leave it in. Depends if it looks good or not. But plug that in there. Plug that in there. Now we've done this in pretty much almost every tutorial. I think there's one where we didn't, or we just very small settings. But we're gonna reuse. We don't need this guy anymore. Oh, I think I accidentally skipped. Yeah, I skipped one thing. But let's finish this real quick and then we'll go back to that thing. This guy goes here. But yeah, we need this guy here. This is coming from the normal. And then this is gonna go into this one. So another curvature smooth into a normal gradient, just plug it into a gradient, nothing's changed. And then we overlay it. You can see the difference here. Just to kind of highlight it. And then we plug in that normal from before into a curvature Sobel. Same thing, gradient with no changes to it, nothing specific. Intensity 0.5, but I think it's the default. And then the overlay, again, these both are overlay. This one's set to 1, this one's set to 0.5. You can see the difference. And then as usual, or actually we have one last thing to do right here. Now, I want this look pretty dark already, but I want these to be black. So it's almost like there's like the stuff below it is dark. So I just added a quick we need to pull from this guy, I believe. Make sure it lines up with this guy. What am I missing here? Did I pull from the wrong one? I think I did. Yeah, this should be coming from this guy. So it's coming from, to follow that, it's coming from this guy. So from the mirror after the tile sampler for the gray holes. And now we're painting the insides solid black. Supposed to be like an abyss down there. Because I don't want any like light bounce coming from in there. I don't want any different color variation. It's supposed to be like darkness below it. That's the reasoning behind that. And then, you know, as usual, I put a little cherry on top or a little sharpen on top. And then there's one thing we forgot. And this is right here. So grab these guys and move them up. And then right here, we just have these guys. And this is pretty much the end of base color. The alternative for this grunt, let's set this up first. And then we need to reuse this guy here. But this is the final stop it's making, so just do that. So we have a grunge brushed dust from Substance Painter. And then I mask out, you know, our mask, and then just plug it back in, copy, uniform color, set to that. And then we just add a final layer of like dust on top. Very subtle, because people are walking on this, so it's not going to be like, it's not like a floor in the corner of the room where it's like no one's stepping on. And then the alternative for this guy, and I didn't spend too much time on an alternative, but I think this one's like okay. This is the end result, and then this is what the one that we used looks like. We could probably tile this once more. Actually, no, that's not it. Probably just put this at the end here. There we go. That might be better. But anyways, we start with the grunge scratches dirty. You can see the settings there. Clouds 2. And then I subtract the clouds from the grunge 30 with an opacity of 0.55. Then we get a dirt 5. And I increase the tiling on it. And then I min darken it to kind of get some of the noise on top of the clouds without losing like the density. And then like we just added we increased the tiling. And then you could plug that in down there. Yeah, if you don't have a painter. So we'll just leave that up there. And I think that's it. This went a little longer than I expected, but we got our base color done. So we went from this to this. Now it doesn't seem like we did too much because everything's very subtle, but you know, that's a lot of what it is. Just paying attention to details. And I could have spent longer on this, but I didn't think it was necessary. But okay. I hope you guys learned something new with the whole painter thing. Sometimes you gotta go in there and there's a lot of good noises in here. A lot of the ones that are in designer are in here, but a lot of the ones that are in here are not in designer. But thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next roughness / metallic. Take care.